I had to go into hiding for months after I left. So untraceable money was a big part of that.
Did your husband try to find you? Did the church try to
Yes,
find you?
he also experienced a massive psychotic break after two things happened. We were excommunicated from our cult, and so the external religious control that he had used to help him function was gone.
Was it
And then
because
I
you
left.
left, or you were
We were
excommunicated before?
excommunicated first. Yeah, we
Mm.
were excommunicated in April, and I left in October.
What
And
was
in
the
between
reasoning
those months
behind
was
that?
hell. I was excommunicated. Oh, you'll get a riot. This is fun. I
It's
I
so fun.
hit
Here we go.
No, I was in a spanking cult. So I was in this homeschooling cult where women were disciplined like children. It's kind of the end of the patriarchal road. Let's process that for a second since you gasped. So yes, I jumped
Adult
churches. I
women.
went
Adult women
adult
were
women.
spanked.
This is taught. This is practiced today, and my
And not
inbox
in a
is full
kinky
of
fun way. Sorry, I have
no,
to make
it's
a
not
joke because
kink.
that
Let
is
me tell you,
so wow.
when I talk about discipline and spanking, the kink community always pushes back and say, hold the phone. We have safe words and consent and aftercare, and that is not this. And they're
Yeah.
absolutely correct. What this
And it's
is
not
Doug will
consensual, too. It's not
it's
consensual.
not
That's the
consensual.
biggest thing. Yeah.
To an environment of no consent, to an environment where you're disciplining your children from babyhood in order
Right.
to get them to comply, and you're doing this child training method.
Wow.
Listeners might be familiar with Michael Pearl's work. I went down this train of Bill Gothard's Institute of Basic Life Principles, which happened within my Baptist megachurch. And then we became independent Baptists, we became Presbyterians, and we became Covenant Reformed Presbyterians. And this is a movement based out of Moscow, Idaho. And it's still thriving. It's actually stronger today than it ever was. But they teach something called federal marriage. And federal marriage is the belief that the father is responsible to stand on Judgment Day before God and account for every single thing that happened in his family, including his wife's thoughts and deeds. And so, since he's going to have that level of accountability before the Savior for his wife, he has to keep her in line. And so, the way that's done is through actual tangible correction. So I'm in this church. I'll bring you up. I'll speed you up. We're in this church in Tennessee where everybody believes this way. It's everyone homeschools. It was the like-minded, kindred spirits, families. All of us were quiverful. All of us had lots of children, and we homeschooled, homesteaded. Women weren't allowed to get together and talk. We had to be silent. Like it's the ultimate fruition of everything that we were had been taught as an ideal was now manifest in this congregation. And in this congregation, I had also started blogging as a way to keep up with my family. And then that led to the blogging explosion when my blog did well online. I was getting 80, 90,000 hits a day from
Wow.
my blog posts
Wow.
as a lifestyle blogger when it was brand new. And that was no bueno for the elders who did not want women writing, let alone writing in their own name. So
Mm.
my first disobedience was that I refused to put my writing in my husband's name. Then I refused to stop writing because I was successful and my family was involved. And so I was like, I'm not going to quit. I was starting to find my feet at this point in the story too. And then I blogged about the Virgin Mary and how important she was to Christendom and that men needed women. Big, big no no. And then, just to top it all off, I read a book on Eastern Orthodoxy and it influenced my husband away from the elder board. And because it was my influence that turned his head,
Mm. Hmm.
they excommunicated me. So that happened in April and we escaped in October. And in between was hell.
So it wasn't a relief. It was, oh, we've lost everything we've ever known.
When I left,
Being excommunicated.
oh, excommunicated was kind of a relief because we got
Okay.
out of that congregation. Um, we found Orthodoxy, which was much more ancient and traditional and family oriented and healthy, psychologically healthy.
Yeah.
So it didn't like the spanking stopped. We became more egalitarian than we had been in our relationship. However, he couldn't function without high control religion. High
Yeah.
control religion had given him the guardrails to stay somewhat sane. And once it was gone, he couldn't function anymore.
You used the word cult before even I was going to, because I was about to ask, this
Mhm.
sounds like a cult. I mean, we've talked to cult experts before, we've talked to victims of cults before on the show. I just want to recap in case people haven't listened to those episodes. Like, cult is all about, again, control, but it's all about, to you specifically, belonging.
Right.
and
Right.
giving you a sense of, especially if you feel lost or confused, a sense of, oh, I finally found my community. I finally found
Hmm.
what my life's purpose is. And it sounds like, especially for your husband, that was a necessary through line, and also the thing that he was completely dependent on in order to live even a, I'm not even call it semi-normal, but a
Hmm.
life that he understood, maybe. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah. And I would say it's kind of both and because the movement changed around us. I call it the cult without walls because the idea is that as a movement, the mind control are the walls. The
Mm,
teachings, the indoctrination, the ways that we affiliate with belonging that doesn't have anything to do anymore with a location. We belong to groups and ideologies without without walls around us. We've built the walls in our minds. And so when you're in a high control group like that and you're not allowed to question it, you're not allowed to become an individual, you don't, your own agency or your own success is not only irrelevant but heavily shamed. You're in the group, and no one joins a cult. They join something that they think is a good thing for their family. So the ways those extreme views manifest in your family life, it's very subtle. It takes time. It's very thorough. And it's really important for us to examine it because the way the Christian patriarchy runs their families, what happens behind closed doors in those households, is their model for the rest of the country. That's how they scale it up to government. And it's why we see, like, when we have, like, Speaker Johnson is a Christian patriarch. Amy Coney Barrett is from a Christian patriarchy church. Like, all of this together brings us back to the way they live in their family life. And so we can know what their view for America is just by and how serious they are about these legislative changes they're making by looking at the way they live their lives at home. And it's you sure it's cult like. Getting out of it is like escaping a cult. You have to break down all the indoctrination and the mind control piece of it separate from, I mean, it's everything you know. Like, it's so comprehensive. You can't, the first thing you have to do is tease things apart, and it's so complicated.
so at what point did your marriage fall apart? Like, at what point do
Mm,
you feel like truly you were, because you were on your own, you had left,
yeah.
but when did you actually feel free of that?
That's a great question. When I left, I didn't even let myself say divorce because I was so conditioned to believe that divorce was worse than death, and I didn't think we'd get divorced. So I was surprised when I was kind of forced into that because the violence made it too dangerous to go back. Um, but really free from it, I mean, you don't divorce somebody like that very easily, and it was very complicated for 10 years. So I think I felt a big one when, well, there were levels. When I remarried, that was one level. I won all sole custody and all of that. That was another level. The real big one was when my baby turned 18 and I no longer am beholden to in any way. Um, and the ultimate freedom is when I was able to tap into compassion for him because patriarchy
Mm,
hurts men too.
yep. Wow. Um, Obviously, very clearly, both from the ability to sit here with me and talk about it and write a book about it, you have gone to a lot of therapy.
A lot, a lot.
What else was helpful? Because I'm thinking of,
Mm,
maybe there's somebody listening out there who, in the most dramatic potential, was in some sort of cult or evangelical movement, or maybe still is, or
mhm.
has maybe just been through something traumatic and is trying to figure out, how do I move forward from that?
Yeah, I really take a kind of a bulldog approach to my healing. I challenge the notion that had to stay broken. And I have applied, like, really and truly that entrepreneurial trad wifey spirit that I had with me all along that's so resourceful that can find my way through hard
Yeah.
things like poverty and make a beautiful childhood for my children. That whole mindset I took and applied to myself. So I
Mm,
said yes to every therapy modality. I got to get out there and try when something intimidates me. I've learned, like, the therapeutic movement has also matured in tandem with my healing. So there's language available today that I didn't have in 2007. This stuff is hashtags now. You can get memes on therapy that that for things that weren't even named, in 2008. So, I mean, I say yes to all of it and I take really good care of my body and my nervous system. I'm constantly educating myself and learning. I refuse to accept that trauma it gets to take my present or my future. It has already had so much of my past, but I'm in charge of me now, and I can decide how much of my life I'm going to give over to that.